what Data Group IT does. Uh, so, as Sami said, we are leading cybersecurity, a distributor company, and our focus is cybersecurity. So, the only thing that we do is cybersecurity. Everything cybersecurity, that's what we do. And here in the screen, I have what we call our six-pillar model, our reference architecture. This is a framework that we came up as a company, having looked at many use cases in cybersecurity, having looked at many scenarios, having interacted with uh, 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 experts in cybersecurity, with consultation with other international frameworks. We came up with this because this, I believe, is something that looks after the whole cybersecurity spectrum. You can agree with me that cybersecurity is a broad spectrum. And when we're talking about cybersecurity, we're talking about different layers of security, right? To fortify uh, an environment, to fortify assets. Okay. So we're looking at different layers of protection to make sure that we harden our environments. Okay. We protect to protect our assets, to protect our data. Data security being the focus of today's webinar. I'm sure we'll agree that that's the most critical and important aspect of every business that needs to be secured. So the six pillars speak to these various aspects, the various layers of security that need to be protected. So from here, we can see that we have a pillar that speaks to data security, and this is a pillar in which Sami will focus so much today. And under this pillar, we look at things like your SIM solutions, and those, I'm sure we can agree that it forms part of a compliance use case other than security as well. We're also looking at solutions that cater to data backup and disaster recovery, database security, as we'll talk about today. Everything to do with data protection, data security. This is a pillar that speaks to that. And in all these pillars, Data Group IT has cutting edge technology, 10 key solutions that um, cater to this in terms of security or to ensure a positive security posture in our businesses, right? So even as I speak to the things that are under this pillar, this is what we focus in, this is what we specialize in providing 10 key solutions to pain points or gaps that may be in any business environment. So even when we look at the other pillar of network security here, we're talking about things like network access control solutions. We're talking about network detection and response solutions. We're talking about, like the traditional network defense, like the traditional firewall solutions. Um, solutions to do with things like DDoS mitigation, right? I'm sure we all understand the pains that come with such attacks like DDoS. So this is a pillar that speaks into everything security as far as network is concerned. So other than that, we also go to the application pillar. And this in the application pillar, we're talking about, securing our web applications, the websites, securing things like our APIs, because now with digital transformation, making life easier, we've seen the use of APIs for communication, like improving business agility and all. There's applications that we're making use of mobile applications which talk to the web applications using APIs. And we've seen actually a lot of attack from, if you look at the OWASP top 10 attacks, we've seen a lot of attacks on APIs. So this is a pillar that speaks to protection of your web applications, protection of APIs, um, things to do with email security, uh, data loss prevention solutions, and you agree with me that a DLP now extends not just to email. We're not just concerned about email communication, but now we have collaborative applications like Teams, for instance. We share information on Teams, SharePoint, and other collaborative applications that we're utilizing nowadays. So this is a pillar that speaks to protection in that aspect. Then we also look at user security. where we talk about identity and access management. We talk about privileged access management. Do you have visibility of control over who's accessing what? Um, Endpoint security protection here. Everything to do with user security falls in this pillar, and solutions to combat attacks or vulnerabilities in this aspect. Everything has DGIT has in the basket. So also looking at cloud security, um, obviously as we embrace digital transformation, the coming in of the cloud just makes things very easy, flexibility in operations, but also exposes your critical assets because you increase, the attack surface of your environment by moving to the cloud. Because you have to make sure that because now your sort of assets are out there open, how do you secure your assets? So this is where we're talking about cloud security and talking about things like cloud access security broker, you know, protecting your cloud infrastructure, be it infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, you know. So everything to do with cloud security falls under this pillar, all right? And no stone is left unturned. DGIT has made sure that we've got the right technology that can speak to protection when it comes to the cloud. And as we talk about this six pillar model, we're not talking about logos, right? We're not talking about the different kinds of vendors that we have. We're just looking at it from a cyber security standpoint and saying, "Well, this is what we need to secure our environment. What does it take to have a positive security posture in your environment? What are you going to prioritize in your environment? What are the gaps that you're having? Okay, from maybe a security point of view, how do you need to secure your environment? From a compliance point of view, what are the requirements from the regulators and the likes? So this is what we're looking at, and this is um, what Data Group IT has put up to say we need to secure every aspect, of the business by looking at this six pillar model. So finally, we have the pillar that speaks to mobile security. There you have your unified endpoint management solutions, solutions that look at protection of your mobile devices, the Android, iOS devices. How do you extend security to those? Because nowadays we're seeing the use of these devices even to access, company resources, company assets to do business. So, but security needs to be extended to these devices as well, other than just the personal computers that we use. So this is a pillar that speaks to everything protection when it comes to mobile devices and all. So in a nutshell, this is what sums up what we call the six pillar model or the reference architecture model, which we use as a guide, to make sure to reference against different organizations, businesses to see if there's a positive security posture in the environment. So as mentioned, as DGIT, we do have 10 key and cutting edge technology that just speaks to every aspect of cybersecurity that these pillars are demonstrating here. So this is just to give you an overview of the many things that we look at as a distributor, cybersecurity distributor, and this actually helps us and positions us as Africa's leading cybersecurity distributor. So with this, I would like to hand over back to Sami so that he can deep dive into the topic of today. Thank you. Over to you, Sami.
Okay. Thank you so much, Felix, for that. Maybe just to finalize what Felix has shared, I know today it's more one-sided in terms of the conversation. It is mostly our team talking to you. But the approach that we actually take is one where we listen to you a lot. So our desire would be that this is just like conversation opener, that if you have concerns around data security or anything else that my colleague has mentioned, that you'll reach out to us and we'll be very happy to listen to you, to understand your problem, understand exactly what your organization is struggling with, or thinking about. And then now from there, we'll be able to recommend the right solution to do sizing, scoping, testing, all those things that need to be done to make sure you get exactly what you need. So let me continue. So if you have any questions, you can put them on the chat. My colleague Diane will be monitoring it. And also, if you need to reach out to us, we'll put our contacts at the end. The contacts of the different account managers for your region will be there at the end of this presentation. So today we're looking at your databases. So the databases are the structured data stores that are part of your organization's IT infrastructure. So there's this saying that data is a new gold, which is quite commonly said. But maybe we can just try to just dig a bit deeper to understand why exactly data is the new gold. And it's a very true statement. So one of the things that we want to experience when it comes to interacting with technology is better personalization and also just ease of use. We want to know that if you want this kind of, if you interact with your brand, with your bank, with your institution, I'm going to have a good experience that's personal, that's easy to understand, that's relevant to me. So to be able to deliver this experience to our clients, which is something that users expect and know now, you must have a very data-rich infrastructure. That's infrastructure that tracks users' information seamlessly and is able to make sure that you deliver an experience that feels good and feels unique to each customer. Then the other challenge that comes up is just companies are in a very competitive environment, and they're driven a lot into trying to get more efficient by using automation technologies. So one of the things that ends up having to be automated is just that process of managing your clients and the information that they have. So how do you make sure that you manage their information efficiently at the best costs and in the most scalable manner? Because today you might be a 1 million member bank, and tomorrow you're 20 million. You have 20 million users. Today you might have 500,000 clients. Tomorrow you have 6 million clients. How do you make sure that you build infrastructure that can scale to that level and still deliver good quality service to clients? So this is where data comes in, that you have to manage your data seamlessly and efficiently so that you're able to deliver these products to your clients and their data remains secure. Then now, as we use this data to drive applications, to drive interactions, to drive user experiences, it presents some challenges when it comes to our day-to-day running of the IT systems. So one of them is that the government tends to be very concerned about the amount of data that you have, and they tend to come up with regulations. So I know that each region represented here has different regulations relevant to your country. So I know our own country, that's Kenya, has a new law. That's a data security law. So it's more or less a privacy regulation law that is pushing institutions to handle user information more sensitively, have better controls over what kind of data they handle. And these regulations tend to impact how we use our data. So maybe the easiest example would be for banking, where they just have to satisfy PCI requirements to be part of the payment card network. So PCI DSS is probably the founding regulations that we've had. But we've had regulations now from the likes of GDPR in Europe that has cascaded into local privacy laws in your countries. So when you look at these laws, the challenge becomes, okay, the business needs certain applications. We need to deliver certain experiences to our clients. That means we have to run certain kind of databases, certain kind of data. But how do you make sure that we satisfy the requirements that the governments have of us? And make sure that even if tomorrow the government leaders wake up and decide to come up with a new law on privacy because a certain company has been breached, will you be able to adapt and still satisfy those requirements? So it becomes a headache and a business risk to be able to make sure you have a way to satisfy regulations and to make sure that whatever comes up, in future be able to satisfy it. The other challenge comes in with the explosion of platforms. So you might find that initially your applications would happily run on Oracle and SQL Server, but then you might find new tools because you want to deliver the best experiences to your clients. And you might find new companies coming up with new solutions that choose new database types. So you want to be able to also work with these new database types. You don't want to only have one or two databases that you can work with, and then it becomes a limit to the growth of your business. And you remember we're in a very competitive landscape. So if you're not flexible, you could easily be overtaken by competitors. So as the platforms on database explode, becomes a challenge. Now, the other angle of it is just the coming in of cloud technologies. So right now, in Africa, we still have quite a lot of on-prem infrastructure, but the direction of cloud is not a matter of whether or not it will happen. It's a matter of when. So some companies, some countries may take longer, but eventually we will all get there simply because it makes economic sense. So you find that the hassle of managing your own data center, your own servers, eventually becomes a risk companies are not willing to take. So for instance, if you manage your own data center and you have a power problem, it's more difficult for you to have a very high level of power redundancy if you just have a single data center. But if you go to a co-location service, you can actually have much better reliability delivered to you, and they can de-risk that aspect of your business. So that's just the first step towards cloud. So once you start using the public cloud, the likes of Azure, AWS, or GCP, it becomes a challenge to still maintain the on-prem infrastructure, maintain the cloud, make sure you're satisfying the regulations, make sure you're still understanding what's happening on these platforms so that you have visibility and control over your users' data. So remember that you are managing a lot of private information, and you want to make sure that whether the workloads are running on-prem, on the cloud, in a shared data center, you have visibility, you know exactly what's happening. You are able to satisfy different compliance requirements by the regulators, and you have more or less control over your data. So these are just points to try pick your mind on the area of data security, and to explain why you would need such a solution that is able to satisfy the requirements on data security or database security. So there are three main things that we focus on when it comes to this security, or that this security offers. The first one and most important is visibility. So you find that IT security usually doesn't have a lot of visibility on what's happening on the databases. So the databases would typically fall under the infrastructure team, and there will be a DBA managing the databases. But security team would essentially be blind to what's happening on the databases. Yet security has a mandate to protect the sensitive data in those databases. So how do they get access and visibility into the sensitive data without making the operations of the databases less efficient? Because remember, the main thing the business wants is for the business applications to run efficiently and seamlessly. That's their primary goal. The other goals are just supportive to that primary goal. So you want visibility, but you don't want to make the database admin's life more difficult. The other area is compliance. So you want to be able to rapidly respond to any compliance requirements, even new ones. So if a new requirement comes, you have a robust solution that can be able to be flexible enough to adapt to that new regulation and give all the reports that are needed for that regulation. Yeah. Then the third one, also on compliance, can your tool be able to, you need a tool that is able to check on how the database has been configured, so that it's able to point out whether there are any gaps, any misconfiguration, anything that needs improvement, so that you can have better security of your database infrastructure. The third and extremely important is the staff being more efficient. So many times when you add new tools, you just create more work for the staff than what they had before. So what you need is a tool that can actually reduce the work for the staff, not increase it, so that you don't have to increase your staff, and also the staff that you have don't get unnecessary load that makes their life more cumbersome and less satisfying. You want staff who are happy to work with you because they use tools that help them to do their work well. So if you look at those 3 points, they can help you to get the right solution when it comes to data security. So maybe going to a bit more detail. What you want is first to simplify compliance. You want to be able to do audits and do compliance checks as quickly as you can and as efficiently as you can. You want to assess your weaknesses and gain visibility on database threats. You want it to be easy for you to just be aware of what weaknesses there are, and also see any threats on the database, any activity that could lead to could risk the data that's inside your databases. And then also to mitigate risks on your databases based on looking at user behavior. So you need a tool that can analyze user behavior and be able to figure out, okay, this behavior, because of the way it looks like malicious activity. So can you automatically identify risky behavior so that you're able to stop it before it leads to data compromise? And then when it comes to compliance, can you automate those governance requirements? Yeah. And then finally, when it comes to a hybrid environment, are you able to ensure that you have security for even workloads that are on the cloud? So these are just some of the things to think about. And then I'll explain how we do it with a solution, which is from a company called Empower. So first of all, the solution can either be deployed as purely on-premise or as a hybrid setup or as a pure cloud solution. So it depends on where you are in terms of the cloud journey. If you're fully on-prem, we can deploy on-prem with no requirement for cloud. If you're on hybrid, we can deploy in both environments and have seamless interaction of the two so that you have one unified dashboard. And thirdly, if you're fully on cloud, we can deploy on the cloud as well. And on the cloud, we will support not only the traditional actual servers, but even for database as a service, we can be able to monitor and monitor those kinds of environments. So we're quite flexible in terms of your cloud journey. When it comes to the monitoring, there are different things that are done by the tool. One of them is discovery. So in discovery, we can help you identify where your databases are seated. Your databases only on the servers. Sorry. You have databases on the user side. So for example, might you have databases seated in the user's machines? Yeah, so those are things you'd want to know. Where exactly your databases are seated, what database services they're running. And then we can now scan those databases. So when you scan the databases, we can be able to do classification, so you can identify data types in those databases and tell you this database has sensitive data, it has this kind of data. We will not show you the actual data in the database because of privacy, but we'll tell you there's PCI data here. There's data related to financial information, there's data related to personal names, to emails, and so on. So with that classification, we'll be able to help you know exactly where the sensitive data is seated on the database. And then when it comes to operations on the database, it's possible to take actions on other systems based on the feedback you get on our database security solution. So phase one, we've done discovery, we scanned the databases, and we've done data classification. So the other thing during the scan, which I didn't mention, is that we can also identify any weaknesses on the databases and misconfigurations. That's something that we'll look at later. So remember that if you have any questions, feel free to ask on the chat. We'll be happy to answer. When it comes to discovery and classification, as I mentioned, we'll find all the databases, including the rogue databases, meaning the databases that should not exist in your environment. The other thing is that we'll be able to help you classify, to get that sensitive data and show exactly where it is. And then, so this works both on-prem and cloud. So it just helps you to know exactly where your data is, and you can schedule this scan to run regularly. So for example, I want it to run every week, and you can run every week until a certain time that you want. Now, the next phase would be assessing vulnerabilities and user entitlements. So I've hinted at this earlier. So we will check your database for vulnerabilities. We'll check whether maybe it has missing patches. Maybe it's been misconfigured. Maybe it's still holding default passwords. So be able to check all those things and report to you that your database has these vulnerabilities and you need to fix 1, 2, 3 things on it. The other thing that we check is the user entitlement. So remember that when it comes to cybersecurity, user privileges are a very big element when it comes to the attack chain. Being able to get users with the right privileges is essential for hackers to be able to progress their attack. So what Empower will help you to do is to identify the permissions of users on the database and tell you whether those permissions are being used. So it helps you to avoid a situation of excess rights on the database. So for instance, I might be running an application that is interacting with a specific database, but the user that's logging into the database has access to all the databases instead of having access to only one database that its application requires. Yeah. The other thing is maybe the application should not be able to delete the database. Should only be able to read and write to those databases, because there's no point in the application where the application will create any new tables, for example. So why should it have that permission? Yeah, because if that application account is stolen, it means the user will have access to the whole organization's databases and be able to do anything they want in all those databases. So that's a huge risk when it comes to user permissions. So something else that we look at is I mentioned vulnerabilities. So we'll be able to tell you which standard or which check your system has failed. You will see it in the demo that we'll have after this. It will tell you which check has failed. It will tell you which patch is missing and what you need to do to fix it. So if it's a misconfiguration, we'll tell you exactly what the misconfiguration is and how you can fix that misconfiguration on the system. An example of user rights management, what I've explained is here. You can see this user called John works in R&D. And you can see the rights they have. They have select rights in terms of privileges. It's a normal user. It's a customer object. The schema they have access to is bills, and so on. So you can be able to figure out what permission someone has and whether or not those permissions are needed. If you have a permission that has not been used for the last 1 year, then you need to remove that permission because it's an excess permission. So Empower will scan, give you that report, and allow you to be able to fix those permissions. In terms of ensuring compliance or employing controls, Empower now is able to do that for you. So it goes beyond just analyzing the health of your databases, but now you can see how it can be able to monitor what's happening. So it has visibility on every single database transaction. They can be able to see someone has logged in, someone has run a query, someone has done an update, someone has inserted new data. It sees all that information. So what do we do with it? So the first thing that you can do is that you can set a policy that says, for example, if this query is run, alert me or send an alert that this query has been done. Maybe it's a risky query, maybe it's a suspicious query. You can be able to send an alert. But beyond sending the alert, Empower is also capable of doing policy-based blocking of transactions that's able to stop those transactions from taking place on the database. I'll explain how the setup works, and you'll see on the demo how it's able to do the controls. And then it is also able to do reports on what has been happening on the database. So these reports will summarize the database activity, so that you're better able to understand what's happening and what risks you have on your databases. Then when it comes to retention, we can keep data for as long as you need. We're able to either use standard file-based audit store, or we can use a big data file store, so that you're able to store data for much longer time and query it frequently. Moving on, it's an example of the depth of the audit information that can be identified. We see a description: application access SQL server from an authorized IP, which is at .23. When it happened, 20th March 2020. Where it happened, with system. So it's on the MS SQL server in the Arlington data center. Who did the transaction? The user was dev app. And then how did they do the transaction? Which app did they use? It's called, it was MS SQL Studio. What they did, meaning the query that was run, is here: select star from short positions. And then enriching is where you can add more data from other sources to what Empower has, so it's able to give you a better report. An example of that same information, but now with examples, with more examples. You can see that the dates, the IP that the activity came from, where they are connecting to, as well as the user, and then the service. You see that. And then also, as I mentioned, we can integrate to external systems. So one of them is things like SIM. We can be able to send syslog to SIM so that it's analyzed further. You can also send alerts to SIM so that they appear on the dashboard of your SOC. So these are things that we can be able to do in terms of allowing our responses to be more actionable. Then you can also set up standard reports that are executed on a regular basis. So maybe you could have a weekly report, you could have a monthly report, and different topics. So Empower has a lot of templates that they use to set these reports, so that it's much easier for you to create the reports. Now, beyond just the mechanics of database audit and the policies, we also have machine learning capabilities built into the solution. So there's a portion of the solution that actually takes the data that is being collected in the database, and then now it integrates that data with the data coming from the user environment, the user information. So it knows that this is the user, this is the IP, this is the group on Active Directory, this is the manager. So it gets information about the users, and then now it uses that to analyze the interaction with the database. So if they find that this user is behaving very differently from what you expect him to behave, it raises it as an issue that you can investigate. So it can help you to really find out where issues are starting, where things are starting from, what challenges there are, and so on. So this tool, in particular, expresses whatever it's discovered in a very simple way. It will tell you a short description of what the issue is. In this case, it's excessive multiple database access, and then it provides more information. So you can see the interactive user, John Hidon, attempted to access an abnormally high number of different databases, 29 in number, over a short period of time of 2 hours, 45 minutes. So now this can help you to best understand where the issues are and better investigate. So if you're a big organization, having data risk analytics makes a lot of sense, that you don't have to comb through so many alerts. You just comb through a few and get to understand what issues there are on your database. Something similar, just that's a different example. It will tell you who did it, what they did, where they did it from, and why Empower thinks that activity is not okay. That's data risk analytics. In terms of architecture, the simple illustration of the scene. We have the databases at the bottom. Now, on those databases, Impower has a lightweight agent that you can install on each of those databases. So that agent doesn't write to the local disk, just picks up the audit and sends this over to its manager. So it picks up the information and shares it to. So it picks up the agent picks up the audit information and forwards it to the gateway clusters. The gateways could be a single gateway or multiple gateways. It depends on the infrastructure size and the level of redundancy that you require. So once they're stored inside the gateways, the managers are going to analyze it. Now, the agent doesn't write to the local disk, and it uses minimal resources locally. So it could just be 5% or less of the local resources. So it's a big deal because our tool doesn't interfere with the normal operations of your database. Now, management, we have the MX, which is a management appliance for covers DB security, but it also has an analytics dashboard, which is separate. I'll explain. Yeah, so that's it in terms of the slides. Any questions before we go to the demo?
We don't have any questions in the chat, Sammy.
Okay, thank you, Diane. So let me share the screen again. I hope you can see my browser.
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you, Diane. So this is the on-prem solution. Can also work on the cloud, but it is how do I put it? It's actually it's not a service. It's a virtual appliance or physical appliance that you can deploy on premise or on the cloud, but it's not in any way a cloud service. Yeah. So I'm logging into this appliance, which can run fully inside your local data center. So on mine, it's just running off an ESXi host, which is this one here. So you just log in. So this is the one on the slide that was written MX, management appliance. And then the login can also be integrated to Active Directory so that you have a single sign-on experience. So I've logged into the audit data page where it shows the audit data that has been collected. So you can see over time, been quite consistent with the amount of data on the system. You can see the trends over time, how many events have been taking place, much the system has been recording. It's quite a bit of activity. The actual data in detail, which will come to that later. The first thing I wanted to explain to you, the element of discovery and classification. So the first discovery is that of services. So if you look at discovery and classification, we go to scan management, you can see you can run a discovery scan. So with this, we just look for database services in your network. So it could be specific VLANs, could be the entire network. You just schedule it to run at a certain date and time, and it's going to run. So for instance, I could decide that I want to look for these databases. Maybe I remove a few I don't want to be searched for. And then here you can choose a network. Like see here, create a network called lab network, which has 100/0/24. So this one, you can create individual IPs. You can create single IPs, range of IPs, or whole networks. What this does is that it allows you be able to choose which area of the network you want to scan and run the scan. Now, the scan can be scheduled to run at a certain date and time. So here you can choose the date here. You can also choose the time. For example, I can choose Friday at 5 p.m. So if I save it, it's going to be run that time. And then in terms of where, yeah, so in terms of the discovery, you'll be able to, as I mentioned, you can schedule it to run at a certain date and time. Once it runs, you're going to see the history here. So once a scan is done, you're going to see a list of discovered servers like this one. So here you can see this is a lab server was discovered. You can see the IPs, the ports, and which service they're running. So that's going to be important. So this can help you to fast identify rogue databases. So rogue databases are especially dangerous because they might be having a copy of actual production data. So if you find a rogue database, you need to investigate to see what you need to do about it. Now, on the other side of discovery is the identification of the actual data. So you can also do a similar scan to identify the actual data in the database. You can see in this case, we used PCI DSS. So we used GDPR scan. So we used the GDPR scan to identify data types, which are listed here. So you can just accept those data types as sensitive, the ones that you need to be sensitive, so that Empower can just be monitoring those activities on sensitive data. Yeah. So the third one is that of user rights management. So here, Empower tool will log into a database, log into the database, and check what permissions different users have. The aim of this is to identify any access rights someone might be having. So maybe someone has access permissions and such things. So you can be able to do that bit to identify rights that are excessive on the user. Now on the setup, this current setup, we have two agents, one on Linux, one on Windows. So the Linux is on a MariaDB database. The MS SQL system is running SQL Server, SQL Express to be specific. You can be able to see that the agent is up and running, and these are the you can see these are the agents that are running, and you can see the stats about the agents, the IPs, that they've been having any data from them. You can see here had some data on those agents. Now the reason why again we use agents is so that one, we can be able to see local activity, even if someone is connecting to the server through RDP or SSH and running the queries locally. So the tool would be able to identify the local activity using the agent. So it's a big advantage the agent-based approach has. Moving on. In this case, we only have one gateway because it's a demo system. But in your case, you might have several database gateways. Yeah, so that's the setup. You can see we're projecting these two applications, A55 or 94. Yeah, so these are the two apps we're projecting. Now, Empower will build a profile for your application, which more or less lists to you different capabilities the system has. So your database has, what users have been connecting to it, what kind of activity are they running. You can have a high level view, what kind of activity takes place in your database. So it builds a profile for each DB. So you can see, in this case, we have on this system, you can see there's Sami, my name here. You can see the number of queries that I run, my source IPs, application, and host name. So you're able to see information about the different users. Moving on to risk management, remember I talked about the scans and the checks it has. So here you can see that different things were identified on the DB, different risks. One of them, the ones that is most common, is known attacks, particularly because the system I use is Windows 10, and I've not updated it for a long time. So it is definitely susceptible to these attacks. So that's why you see a lot of known attacks on this particular system, because I'm using old software. But it will be relevant because sometimes the work environment, we're not able to keep up with the patching requirements. So it's important the security team has that visibility so they can see how to prioritize that patching by fixing other issues. So that's something important to take note of. Yeah, so let's look at a few of them. So you can see this one, known attacks. It's a high issue. It's a high severity issue. You can see the vulnerability. And you can be able to, you can see it's the vulnerability. And description. So an attacker could exploit the vulnerability by tricking the indicated user to do attempting to connect to a malicious SQL. So it explains why the thing was raised as an issue. And then the best thing is we'll tell you what to do to fix it. So in this case, install security update from August 2023 or later. So it has a fix for each issue. So if you have outstanding database audit issues, I'd recommend you consider this because you have a way to counter check what exactly is happening on your DBs in terms of risk. You'll be looking at one or two more. Access control. So users have full database access, which you need to reduce. So you can see why this is an issue described here. And then now you can continue. So another one, authentication and user management. So here you can see the grant privilege that allows a principal to grant any principal additional privileges. Yeah, so you can be able to see the description and finally how to fix it. It's explained there. Abdian, is there any question before I continue? Okay, so when it comes to policies, there are two types.
Sammy, we do have a question in the chat. Oh, Kevin's answered, no worries.
Okay, that's fine. Thanks so much, Kevin. So when it comes to policies, there are two types. One is audit policy, which is what you define on the system that you want to audit. So for example, you can choose for a specific database that will audit everything. For another DB, you might say, I only want read writes to be, only writes and inserts and updates to be audited. So you see the different policies available here. Each of these is provided by Power Application Defense Center or ADC. And it's quite useful to be able to set specific audit policies because you're able to save on resources and not just audit completely everything. You can tweak it to your requirements. Now, the other angle of it is security. You can set up policy to identify certain scenarios that would be reacted to or acted upon. So as an example, you have this policy that says if the column is the operation type, the column is at least the salaries column in the salary column in the salaries table. And then you can also see the DBN schema, also defined as employees. And then the destination tables again is defined. So you can be very specific to capture a certain issue, and could be able to apply controls on your system. So this has been applied to the Linux system, which is a MariaDB system. So basically it says that Is this loading? So it says that that if someone tries to update the salary amount, that you should block the connection. So that's a security policy. We'll come to that shortly. Then the audit is the actual audit information. So if you look at the last few hours, you see there's been a lot of activity. So this is because before the session, I actually ran a few queries to create some audit events. You can see all the activities here. You can look at a summary of it. You can see we have almost 2,000 hits on a daily basis, with between 150 and 48 logins. And you can see the servers are there. It's quite been a busy week for the database at least. Yeah, so you can see there's been quite a lot of activity on the database, and there are a lot of nice graphs and charts to help you to understand what's happening. You can see the servers here are two. There's a .55 and a .194. So remember, 55 is the MS SQL Windows machine, and then the 194 is the Linux machine. You can see the activities are quite evenly spread between the two. Okay. On the databases, you can see this at the list. So you can create a filter based on all these criteria. For example, I may want to, add master to the filter, or even better, you can be able to take one of the events and add it to the filter. So that in this case, where it captures everywhere where the database adventure works. Any questions so far? All right, let me continue. So you can add a filter. So let's say you want the database to be employees. When it comes to the users, you want Sami as the user. So the database employees and Sami is the user. And to see Sami's activity on the database, let's go to the so you can see these are the kind of queries that I've been doing in the system. So they're quite many. But in terms of privileged queries, you can see these are the 4 privileged queries I did. So there was alter table, there was create table, and there was drop table. You'll be able to see those details. Let me just show you an example. Yeah, so you can see this is a full audit information. So you can see the source IP, the user, destination IP, the operation type, the object, the full query is there, and even the database response time. So it's very thorough in giving the details, and then it has a lot of filters on the side that can help you to drill down to get exactly what you need. Now, if you put a policy, it would create an event if the policy is triggered. In this case, the block salary update was actually triggered. So if you look at the details, you'll see that it was blocked here in terms of action. And this is the policy that you just looked at earlier, the block salary update. And you can see the connection details. So this 197.248, that's a source IP going to this particular IP that's on this server. And then you can see this exact query that was run. Someone was trying to increase someone's salary. So it identified the source IP, it identified the source user, as well as which DB application they're using. So it was quite effective in doing that. So that's just a brief overview of Empower's solution. So Empower also has an analytics tool which looks at things at a much higher level, but today we're focusing more on the audit and compliance tool. So the analytics is something that I would say is something that I would recommend that you also consider if you're looking at data security and you have a lot of databases. This is something I would highly recommend that you have this tool that uses machine learning to collect all the information on database audit and then create incidents based on the information. So you can see in this case, the events only move between 0 and 254 events. If you look at the data being collected, being analyzed, it's in the tune of 200 to 400 million. So it takes all this data, analyzes with the machine learning models, and then creates incidents. That you can see these are the users who are most suspicious, these are the sources most suspicious, and destinations most suspicious. Then you can drill down to see exactly why it raises a suspicious issue. When you drill down, you get more details like what you saw in the slides. In this case, John Hedon, you can see this is a summary. This is a description of the issue. And this is even the information, their full name, their host name, IP address, and so on. And you can drill down for more details. So it has a summary, but you can drill down for details. So just hopping back to the presentation, to conclude. So the solution that we presented is Empower solution. It helps you with visibility, compliance, more efficiency of staff, and very speedy resolution because of the way it works and the use of machine learning models. And then Empower is a company that has a proven track record. So you can see this slide, 4 of the 5 largest banks globally and 3 of the 5 largest insurers globally. So it's a very well-known solution with a lot of accolades and wins across different third-party analysts. So that's our presentation today for the webinar. We hope it was helpful to you. And I'm looking forward to having more interactions with you. So feel free to reach out to the team. So you can see your local salesperson or local account manager is on the screen. So you can just save it, but we'll also send you an email with their contact details so that you can reach out to us. So thank you so much for your time. Handing it back to Diane.
We don't have any questions in the chat. Maybe let's just give them a few minutes. We will be sending out a recording of the session if you would like to review, including the details of your relevant account managers after the session. If there's no questions, I think we'll close the session. Thanks everyone for joining.
Thank you everyone for joining and looking forward to interacting with you. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thanks, bye.